What's up everyone? How you all doing? I hope you guys had a great week. So this week we're gonna be talking about the games that actually shaped me and made me want to be a games developer from a very young age. So I decided to make this episode personal because this is basically the stuff that got me here and got me feeling this way about games and ultimately being a games developer. So welcome to another episode. Let's get to it. So the very first games that I've played and the things that actually got me falling in love with games the most, I think, to this day, it was a console called the Spectrum ZX128K. My neighbor is downstairs. He had the cheaper version, which was just a keyboard, and then you had to kind of like put a audio jack connected to some kind of cassette player. You need to be a recorder and player at the same time. And the games used to come in a cassette, relatively cheap in comparison to nowadays. You would go to the supermarket or whatever, you could find them because it was rare at that point. 1985 or so. I must have been about, 7, 8, something like that. Yeah, 87. And yeah, you would actually buy the cassette, put it in the cassette player, and then you had to play the cassette, just press play. On the screen, you would just see like little bars with just one image and just bars on the side, just going like a modem. And then eventually, after what it felt like, I swear to this day, it must have been about 2 hours to load. Eventually, the game will load up and then you could play. That's why we had the keyboard there and all that stuff. There was no mouse, as far as I remember. There was no mouse, it was all keyboard, and it was a lot of fun. I used to spend hours and hours and hours just playing the same games all the time. Skate or Die, Manic Miner. I used to be like, man, this is amazing. This is like so cool. A lot of the times the games didn't load up because the cassette player wouldn't work correctly. That was weird. Yeah, that was my first experience with video games. And from that point onwards, I was like, this is special. There's something about it. I realized how much it messes up with your psyche and your mind and your feelings. At some point, I actually was losing in a game and I took it so badly that I grabbed an object that was like, I think it was some keys or something, and I scratched the CRT screen. My neighbor was not happy. I could not play games for a while after that. But it was funny, even looking back, to realize how much emotion games actually kind of just make you feel, much more than any movie or anything else. At that point, I didn't quite realize it as much as I do now, but it was really interesting to see. I remember playing the NES and being mesmerized about the fact that no longer I had a computer anymore, the keyboard. Now I had a controller and I could play it on the TV. The NES had amazing peripherals, guns and bazookas and all kinds of stuff, and like it was just an amazing console, amazing controller.
Enemy flyers and heavy artillery. The battle will lead to many places, from the Bulldog Cafe to a Zeppelin high in the Hollywood skies.
And that was like so cool. And at that point in time, Super Mario was actually super cool and super high res and super like next gen. So for me, it was like, this is the future, so cool. I also remember like how much more consoles I remember seeing in people's houses. Like I had many more friends that had consoles now than when I was little. So games were definitely exploding at that point. The Mega Drive came along as well. Sega was in the game. Nintendo and Sega were like enemies at that point. You could like one or the other, but you could not like both at that point. So I remember having discussions with my friends about which one do you prefer, Sonic or Mario? And then if you said one or the other, we're like, boo, you don't know about it. This Sonic is so much cooler. Mario is so much cooler. No. And it was so much fun to just have those kind of arguments as a child you think is the most important thing ever.
There you have it. Nintendo wins. it will take centuries to invent something that'll top that.
So that was basically like the next step that I think that took me over and made me a gamer. Like I was definitely invested in this idea that games was cool, and I knew what I wanted and I knew what I liked, and this was cool and this was not cool, and all that good stuff. My godmother also had a computer, and on that computer she had the game Myst. It was basically just images, right? So you had an image and you had some text and you had to select which way you should go and what kind of decision you had to make. And then based on your decision, another image will load up, and then you had more decisions and more things to go. And just that was enough to fill my brain up with amazing fantasies. Like to this day, Myst was animated, was actually a place that you could go to because it felt so vivid. It felt so good to me. So that was the next experience that I had in terms of games that really marked me and then really like got me like interested in like knowing more about games. After that, like years later, once again, I remember the PS1 came out. Sony came out with a console. And yeah, I remember vividly like that gray console, like it felt so weird to me. It was like a weird color. To this day, I remember thinking this is bold of Sony to just have a gray box that plays games. And I also remember thinking about the discs. Every other console before then had cartridges. This had discs, had CDs, like proper discs. And that console was so badass for so many reasons. The controller was different than anything else. The console itself looked different than anything else. The discs looked different than anything else. It did a noise because it was like lasers, like reading the disc. The noise of the PS1 was like nothing else. And every single time that I used to see it, I used to just admire it and be like, man, not only did I want one for myself that I couldn't afford, but I also used to think, this is the future. This is it. We arrived. This is the future.
Remember, do not underestimate the power of PlayStation.
So yeah, playing the games in the PS1 was great. I remember playing Parappa the Rapper, Jet Set Radio as well. That was another great game. Tony Hawk, that was an amazing game. SSX, amazing. The console was full of games. Tomb Raider, I played it first on PC, but then I played it again on PS1, and I remember being even more amazed about seeing Tomb Raider on the big screen, TV screen, than I was on PC. Everything about PS1 just changed my mindset to think this industry, it's gonna be huge in the future, and this is just no longer games. This is something else. And at that point in time, I was like 17, 18. So I remember thinking at that point, like, I think there's something here that I can actually kind of be part of, if I can, and actually make like something interesting. But I never thought about getting into the games industry. At that point in time, I was actually very much focused on being a comic artist. It was only when I actually kind of like was in London, chilling, actually working, trying to actually make something of myself, I was serving tables, I was not earning a lot of money, trying to think about what I should do with my life, that I thought there is going to be a line here that I'm going to have to take some really hard decisions about what I want to do going forward, because I can be a comic artist and freelance all my life, or I can actually find a full-time job. And because I was so afraid of not getting money at that point in time, because I was so broke, I thought freelancing was definitely not for me, because if I was broke then as a freelance artist, because there's so little work, I was gonna be broke for the rest of my life. That's how I saw it. Obviously it's not the case. So I needed to find a full-time job. I thought, for me to find a full-time job, I need to find something in art. So what is the closest thing that I can get to comics, since I loved it so much? And the thing that I found that was a full-time job that was closer to comics was animation. Just before university, I had a few gigs that were to do QA, so like testing games, getting paid for it. And the gigs before then, was just like freelance contracting. They would call you whenever they needed you to test games. So I remember testing Halo. I remember testing Knights of the Old Republic. There were so many games that I tested that were really, really amazing.
This is it, baby.
Every week there was new games coming in, and we would test it for a week, and the next week would be more games. It was at that time, doing university full-time, doing that job from time to time, including my full-time job that I was doing, which was like working in a shop. All of those things together made me really think that games were the way forward. In that job, when I was QAing, I met a lot of people that were as passionate for games as I was and more. And I found my niche. I found my people in a way. I found people that actually kind of I could like bounce ideas with. I found people that know so much about games that made me curious to know even more about games. They know the history of the game, of the studio, of the industry in general. There was so much knowledge shared there, especially in the canteen while we were having lunch or dinner sometimes when you had to do overtime. By the time I finished university, I was pretty much convinced at this point that what I wanted to do was games. I wanted to animate for games and not movies, and I was gonna go all in because the new consoles were about to come out, and I think it was Xbox 360 and PS3, and at that point I was like, man, when these consoles come out, if the games look good now, PS2 times, then imagine how they're going to look when Xbox 360 comes in. It's going to be great. So if I actually manage to get into the industry before then, it's going to be great. I'm going to be like at the forefront of this new consoles generation. It's going to be great. That's what I thought in my mind. But unfortunately, what happened next was that I just got more QA work at Sega. At that point, the QA work didn't pay so well. It was good people. I made some of my best mates over there at Sega QA. Shout out to all those that are watching this video. They worked in QA with me back in the Sega days, and it was a lot of fun. But unfortunately, it was not actually work as a developer, especially because Sega actually treated people really badly, unfortunately. So because of all that, I actually worked there for a while, and then I was fired like in the most horrible way. They just like took me aside, took my badge, walked me downstairs and said, don't come back ever again, which kind of made me super disheartened about the industry, because there was a good side and a bad side, and it turns out QA is no longer part of development, and I don't know, it just felt odd to actually kind of work in an environment that way. So anyways, I continued actually working on other jobs outside of the games industry while working on my animation skills to make sure that I could actually get my first job. That is basically how I got to this point of actually working in games, because yeah, it's been a long journey. I finally got my job about 3.5 years, 4 years after I finished my degree in animation, after a lot of ups and downs. And then when I got in as a developer, as an animator for a game in a games company, I felt like I made it. At that point, I was actually earning quite a bit of money, and I had to take a massive pay cut because I was changing industry. And it was another point of my life that I thought, if I really want this, if this is my passion, I need to make it happen. And so I did, and the rest is history, and now I'm here. And the fact that I can talk about it with other people, especially with my old heads, people that I actually have 40 years plus like me, it just feels good. It feels amazing to be part of it. It feels amazing to have a bit of history, to know how certain things made you feel when the NES came out, when the SNES came out, when the Master System and the Sega Mega Drive. So I couldn't really be more lucky to actually be part of this industry. I love it with a passion. I really think that this is the future. There's so much more we can make and we can do, and I really hope that I can actually spend the rest of my days in this industry trying to help it and trying to actually kind of grow it in the best way I can and fulfill its potential, because there is a lot of potential, and it's still early days, and there's so much more that we can achieve in this industry. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. A little bit of history for you guys. I would love to know how you all got into games. Please let me know down in the comments, because we all started somewhere somehow. Tell me what's your first game that you played, the best console, and yeah, let's chat about it. I love to chat about games. It's just the best thing. So drop a comment down below, let me know what you think, and I hope you enjoyed the content. So that's all I had for this week. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and as always, until next week, stay well, stay safe. Peace.